Hello, I am Connor Nielsen
And I am Spencer Nielsen.
of CS Reviews, and you know what I really love? A good movie. Well, it is March the 3rd, and we are going to be talking about the last of the February movies. We're going to be talking about the Lazarus, well, first we're going to be talking about Focus, the new Margot Robbie, Will Smith, con thriller romance movie. And then we got a cheap horror movie that came out called The Lazarus Effect. And then we also have a bit of a surprise coming at you later. How you doing, Spence?
I'm doing very well, actually. It's been a pretty good day. Yep, it's beautiful up here in the Pacific Northwest. It's sunny, pretty warm, kind of balmy. Everywhere else it's snowing, so go figure.
Of
How are you
course.
doing?
I am doing very, very well myself. Um, I spent about like 10 hours at school today, so that's fun. So, anyways, yeah, let's get into these movies.
All
First
right.
off, we have Focus. Spencer, tell us about Focus.
All right. Focus is the latest, not latest, it's a Margot Robbie, Will Smith sort of vehicle. I have a feeling they're going to be the next sort of Hollywood couple in a similar way Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence are, without actually being a couple in real life. But anyways, this movie stars them as con men. Will Smith as a successful leader of his own industry of con men. They do volume jobs where they do smaller jobs, but all across the board, and he's a pro. He's on top of it. And Margot Robbie is an up-and-comer who really wants to get into the game, and she wants to prove herself to Will Smith. And she gets the opportunity, and they actually start to form a bit of a romance. But is everyone who they say they are? You can never lose focus while watching Focus. Connor, what did you think of Focus?
Um, Unfortunately, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this movie because the movie isn't really engaging. Um, I don't want to. It makes it sound like I'm being a little too hard on it than I need to be. It didn't really like grab my attention. It's very kind of forgettable, very middle of the road, and I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about here. But I mean, it's not bad. That's kind of my first reaction before we get into everything. What's your reaction?
Well, before we get anything, my initial reaction is I think you said it best, where in some regards it feels like a high-end January movie. Not in the sense of the quality per se, but in the sense of the feel of it, because a lot of the times when I was watching this, I had a hard time feeling that I was watching a studio movie that was released in the theaters. It felt kind of TV-like in some ways, which is funny because I think the movie looked sleek and polished and quite, you know, it had a certain look that it achieved the look it was wanting to go for. So right off the bat, I think uh, it's a forgettable but not totally inept entry into Will Smith's movie canon or whatever.
All right, let's go into some positives. All right.
All right, what are some positives, Connor? Lay them on me.
All right. So first off, I want to say that Will Smith and Margot Robbie really have good chemistry. It's kind of just like they're both very naturally likable, charismatic people, and I think that they have great chemistry. The charisma's great. But there's good performances all across the board, but nothing's really stand out. It's just serviceable performances all around. Um, I think that the first half of the movie ends strong. This movie really ultimately feels like two movies, which, I mean, it has two directors, so I think you can attribute it to that. And I think the first half does end on a very high note. Um, there's a movie that came out, well, we watched the surprise movie, if you will, we actually decided to review because it reminded me quite a bit of this movie, or at least this movie reminded me of that movie. In the sense that I felt like this movie should have been more like that movie, and because the way it is it, I understand why they chose to do this, but the way they introduce us to this world of con men is very similar to Inception, and you know what I mean? It's like I'm not gonna dock it for trying to do that same approach. It's a very effective approach at introducing us to a world. And I mean, Inception's one of my all-time favorite movies. But I think when you're trying to have some kind of like a romantic thing, it feels more like a teacher-student romantic relationship rather than like. I feel like the focus should have been more on Margot Robbie's character.
That would have
Um,
actually been great. Very actually reminiscent of if they actually made it more like Inception and seen it more through her eyes. I feel, well, at least the seeing the world. There is an element of that, but I feel if they went this step further and actually made her the central character for a while, the way Inception did for about a half hour there, I felt it would have been stronger because of it.
well, I think like the way the movie is Will Smith is the main character, right?
Yes,
When he introduces Margot Robbie into this world, it's very similar to Inception, is what I'm getting at.
it is, yes.
And I feel like if it was started off as Margot Robbie learning about Will Smith, and then after the first half it switched its focus to Will Smith, I think structurally it would have been more interesting, and I think it would have fleshed out both of their characters a little bit better.
I would have to agree with you on that. But I
Um,
think for where it stands, though, at least Smith and Robbie do have great chemistry. They seem natural with each other.
yeah. Also, things I liked the movie looks very good. On a lesser scale, it sort of reminded me visually of Nightcrawler, just less nocturnal.
I can see that had the high brights and the low darks.
Yeah, I think visually it looked great, and I think like Nightcrawler was gorgeous. So if it sort of reminds me of Nightcrawler, it's doing something right. I think the directors have a vision that they're going for, and they mostly get it. I think like the style they're going for was all there. I think that the like they have musical choices throughout the movie that I think really work. Um, I think that the cinematography, it's, it's all there, the style and everything, but I don't think that the script and the editing are. And I'm going to get into that later. So Spencer, what do you like about Focus?
Well, as you said, I think the look it looks polished and sleek, and it's trying to go for the whole glamorous kind of the sexy con movies that were sort of around in the 70s. It feels very much inspired by American Hustle, just without the charming characters. I mean, they got charming actors, but not quite charming characters in the script.
I think that's a good comparison.
Yeah, it feels like they saw that and went, well, what if we took sort of that glamorous, ooh, ah, kind of 70s movie, but set it in today? And I think it would have worked if the script was as tight and as trying to be as good as American Hustle. Now, not every movie's going to be as good as American Hustle because that movie was amazing. But this one, I felt it really went overboard. And and I think that the movie has some genuinely great moments. There's the sort of the last act of the first half. I think there's this big twist about it, and when they sort of like explain it, I thought it was actually pretty funny.
Yeah,
But
I really like that.
yeah,
At first I was like, they're gonna explain this, and then when they did, I was like, that actually makes it better.
yeah, it was actually very humorous, and at the same time, it added to it still put pieces together, and I thought that twist was great. But I think later in the script, other good moments are undermined by a pretty lackluster script towards the end of the movie, where it just gets twist over twist over twist. I'm like, and I hate to use this word, but plot holes. At the end, it gets so overboard with the twist that you think, well, wait, how did plot device go from point A to point B if this isn't true, but this is true. And it gets really ridiculous. It's, people, aren't who they seem to be. And when some characters are revealed to be like, well, that doesn't make sense because in a scene back when they didn't interact as if they were this sort of relationship. And I think that if the script was tighter and actually didn't feel like a first draft or a brainstorm, there could have been a better movie here. And it's a shame because you got some great actors trying to get along, and you have some great cinematographers and lighting. Technically, this movie is pretty great. I just think this is the best, not the best, but a pretty good example of it all centers around a script.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. Like the script's just not there, unfortunately. But at the same time, like I understand why these people signed on for it. Like
I do too. Yes.
It's not like a Seventh Son where you're like, why did you do this?
It's not like Black Hat.
Black Hat. Oh,
well, at the very least, you could say Michael Mann, and then some people would sign on. Seventh Son, oof.
Or like Mordecai. It's like Johnny Depp. People still think he's relevant, right? And let's get into stuff that we don't like.
I guess we already sort of started that off.
Yeah, I feel like unfortunately we did. Ultimately, what I don't like about this movie is like its structure. Like at first, sort of intrigued me, but especially when it gets into the second half, I feel like it gets repetitive, but not in the traditional sense. I feel like each scene becomes repetitive. Like there's a scene early on where he's sort of showing her the ropes, giving her a bit of a tutorial, where he's like, I kept you here, you're distracted over here, and I steal this. You know what I mean? He's doing all that stuff. That scene just went on forever. I'm like, okay, we get it. And then it kept going on. I'm like, okay, we get it. Stop doing that. Stop it. Forget it. Stop it. Stop it. And then it just kept going on and on. I was like, okay, come on. And then there's another scene where it's like, okay, here's one thing. And then they repeat that, and then they repeat it, and then it gets so annoying. And it's like, okay, move on. It felt padded. And then especially in the second half, where it just felt like another interaction between Margot Robbie and Will Smith, and then another interaction between Margot Robbie and Will Smith, where they talk about one thing for a lot of times, and then another interaction between Margot Robbie and Will Smith, and then they just keep talking. Like each conversation is different, but within that conversation, they're just saying the same things. And these it started to feel like isolated incidents that didn't build on each other to make a story. And that's ultimately where my frustrations come into.
Yeah, it does get repetitive, even just within the scenes themselves, as you were going on about. The scenes in themselves become repetitive, and then there's a lot of them, yeah, as you were saying. But it's stuff like that, and then it just starts culminating more towards the end. It's like when you write an essay, and you have these ideas in your head, and you're like, oh, I know. Then you start off strong. I know this great hook that I'm gonna grab the reader with, and then I'm gonna start off on my points, and then have to go to bed, and then I get distracted with other stuff. Then when you return to this essay, it just sort of starts off strong, but just kind of crumbles underneath it, and you go, oh, well, I'm done good enough, I'm going to turn it in. It felt like that, because towards the end, I feel like focus starts losing focus, which is...
Ha 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 ha.
I know.
Not like everyone else has made that joke.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't mean that a little bit more than just the pun, because in a way it feels like that's sort of what they go for. It's about these people that it's a game of focus, and then they start losing focus. Like these characters start losing, like they don't. It's all about people sort of losing their minds for other people, But I feel that the writer-director, it's both two people wrote and directed this movie, which explains a lot, especially with the structure of the movie as it feeling like two separate movies. But I feel like writer two, I'm just going to say that person, it's hard to explain. It feels like they lost focus of the script along with the characters. It was almost consistent in its disfocus.
It feels like, oh man, we're in a foreign country. Whoa, yeah. So
Yeah.
I also like the ending's a bit of a bad ending, and like
Oh.
I get what they were going for. It's like it's more comedic than anything, and the kind of the way they ended it, like especially for me, that sort of ending usually works. Which is kind of like an, hey, we don't really know how to wrap it up, but here's a gag, you know.
Yeah,
And
I know what you mean, and
usually the gag's funny enough for me, and it just kind of feels like the writers know it's convoluted and it's not really about the story. But this one really kind of was about the story, you know, and the characters. So the kind of the gag at the end just kind of felt like a bit like a cop out.
yeah, I know what you mean, and there's like there's this lingering plot thread where it doesn't even feel like the plot that the second half was actually about. It's sort of up in the air and goes, yep, well now it's over. And you're like, okay, what? Which it's almost the opposite of the first half, because in the first half it just feels like exposition. We're getting to know the world, and then as it turns out, there's a big twist where all of it was sort of feeding into this plot line, and it ends with all plot. And like, oh, that was actually kind of cool. And this one is like the opposite effect, where it's all plot, and at the end it just ends because of some kind of character resolution, and that just didn't seem to work. I don't know, especially with this. Oh my goodness, what's his name? There's the second act. There's the villain's hench person, and he's this older guy. It's like they couldn't get who played Mike Ehrmantraut on Breaking Bad.
Oh, him, Jonathan Banks.
Yeah, Jonathan. It's like they couldn't get Jonathan Banks, so they just hired this guy, and they do your best. You do your best Jonathan Banks impersonation, and it's so lousy. It's this generation.
That's a good comparison, but unfortunately, Mike Ehrmantraut's the best character from Breaking Bad, so you can't exactly.
I wouldn't go that far, but he is pretty great.
He's the best character, whatever. That's all I really have to say about Focus. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. It's just middle of the road for me.
Yeah, and I would have given it a 5, but the ending, it just gets so ridiculous, and they just try twisting it to the point where it's almost a brain dead script. Uh, so I'd give it a 4 out of 10. Yeah, it's it's all right. I guess it's worth a rental if you really like Will Smith, and if you liked Margot Robbie in Wolf of Wall Street, she continues to do well here. I would actually, I want to see how they do in Suicide Squad, because they're both in it, and they're both sort of the headliners along with Jared Leto, and I'd just like to see, I'd like to see how they interact, see their chemistry. I'd like to see them go on as sort of the next Hollywood character couple.
I do have to say, if you like Will Smith, it's worth checking out. Because I mean, usually like people who just want to go see a movie, oh look at Will Smith and that girl from Wolf of Wall Street who was really good in that movie. Let's go see it. I mean, if you just want to see two likable actors do the thing, it's like rental matinee stuff. But I think as a movie, it's just kind of middle of the road.
I agree with you. All right, Connor, what do we have next?
Next up, we have the Lazarus Effect. You did not see this one with me, did you?
I did not. You saw it without me, actually, unbeknownst, and I could have seen it with you. You scallywag, you.
Yeah, I got off from work early one night because it's super slow, and then I said, "Hey, I have enough time to go catch a movie," so I did. The Lazarus Effect is a grounded science fiction horror movie starring Olivia Wilde, Mark Duplass, Donald Glover, and Evan Peters. It is about college students students who go to a university that they all look a little too old to be in college.
I was gonna say Olivia Wilde as a college student.
Mark Duplass as a college student.
What?
Like, Donald Glover's getting to that age where he doesn't exactly look. He looks like he graduated college, and then
It looks like he advanced from Community.
Yeah, but Evan Peters does look like he belongs in college, and he plays the stoner, and so. Anyways, so they are all they're part of like a team. They're not really a class. It's kind of like an internship or whatever. Anyways, they're a group of people that are doing a science experiment where they're trying to bring the dead back to life with the Lazarus serum. I said that like Daffy Duck, the Lazarus theorem. We made it with the Pythagorean theorem. So that's kind of what it is, and then they start playing God, and then danger ensues, scary stuff happens.
When you play God, devilish consequences ensue.
Exactly. So I didn't like this movie very much.
Oh, what a shocker.
Yeah, I know. A first quarter horror movie that wasn't good. Who would have guessed it? Now, so I'm going to try to keep this brief. First off, this movie just feels very, it feels high-end TV. I've looked into the director. He hasn't directed very many other things, a lot of made-for-TV things, naturally. And I think a lot of it, not a lot of it, but the casting... So let's see, you got Mark Duplass from The League. You got Olivia Wilde, who was in she was in House, right? And then you got Donald Glover from Community. Then you got Evan Peters from American Horror Story. And then making like this surprise cameo that comes out of nowhere is Ray Wise from he's Leland Palmer from Twin Peaks. And it was just, it was a bit surreal. It felt like a TV movie. In its production too, like the way it's lit, the way it's shot, it just feels very TV. And the scares feel very much like when you watch like what is it called? Like an investigation Discovery Channel, and they try to creep you out by showing you creepy imagery like a doll or something. This felt like, ooh, look how scary this is, by like investigation Discovery standards, if you know what I mean. So we have, well, so this whole TV thing really, the way this movie was written felt like it could have been a pretty decent TV show. Because it's about these people that are trying to play God, and you see a lot of their the way their experiment starts to escalate, and I'm thinking this really could have worked as a TV show, because it's plotted similar to that of a TV show, where you got like, okay, now we're gonna do this, and then they're kind of questioning these. They're elaborating on these these questions that arise when they're trying to do this thing, because naturally questions are going to come up about what is heaven, what is hell, is there death, all those kinds of things. Are you bringing someone back from heaven, you're bringing someone back from hell when you bring them back to life? And it all and you don't really know any of the characters, and I feel like in a TV show we would have gotten to know these characters more. And the only character that we get to know is Olivia Wilde. And all the performances here are good, except for Donald Glover, who's really kind of bad, actually. But the only character we get to know, or even know anything about, or care remotely for, is Olivia Wilde. And by the end of the movie, that character, you don't care about her by the end of the movie. So it just kind of forgoes a lot of characters and a lot of the stuff, a lot of the ideas it had set up that were sort of intriguing on their own. I mean, we've seen them 100 times before, but they're kind of intriguing, and it just kind of gets rid of all that just for the scares. And because it's plotted this slowly like a TV show, it can't help but feel like a very long period of exposition, a very long period of just like a first act, and then a long, overblown, oh my gosh, why don't you end climax? So it feels like it's missing a second act. And that's another big issue I had with this was I was like one of the only people in the theaters, and I checked my phone at one point, and like there's only like 25 minutes left in this movie. Like nothing's really happened. It's been very slow build, and we haven't really got to know any of these characters. They haven't really explored these things, and so it's just trying to we haven't really explored these ideas or these characters. So it feels like we're just trying to like build up atmosphere, but it's not one of those movies. And the movie just isn't scary. It's the movie's biggest strength are its ideas that it takes for sci-fi stuff that we've seen 100 times before. But it could have done something interesting with its setting, but it didn't. It just took its setting and made it a slasher movie with scientists. That's all it really became. And the ending of this movie is very, very bad, and it really steps on the kind of hopeful, thoughtful kind of it had a very kind of thoughtful air about it, and sort of optimistic, even though these scary bad things are. There's like these ideas of you can, choose pessimism or choose optimism, and whichever way you work, you can try to get to them. But the ending of the movie really kind of killed all of that feeling, and just to try to scare you one last time, just to try to make you creep you out one last time, and just to kind of have a bit of a cliffhanger because there's one loose thread for a sequel. And I don't want to see this sequel.
Does it try to pull a Halloween?
Sort of, but not nearly as effective. In Halloween, the story's over. It just has a, who the boogeyman's still out there kind of ending. This one just has this ridiculous, kind of overblown, apocalyptic ending that was not good. Yeah, I'm giving the movie a 3 out of 10. It was okay for a while, and then it didn't go anywhere, and then it all of a sudden became a climax, and it was all about the scares, so didn't like it.
All right. All I can offer is, well, didn't like the trailer. Wasn't interested in seeing the movie. Donald Glover was the first to die, I assume?
Yeah, they show you that in the trailer. Really? The black guy is still the first one to die? Okay. So, the surprise movie that we saw was actually a classic movie. No, wrong, bad timing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I work at a Cinemark theater, and every Sunday and Wednesday we show a classic movie. And the movie we decided to watch was none other than Charade, starring Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. And I had seen this movie once previously on Netflix. It's also available on Criterion Collection Blu-ray, and I kind of wanted to buy that, but it always kind of escapes my mind. But you have not seen this movie before, and I said, dude, we're seeing this movie. And we did. And after watching it, there's actually quite a bit of similarities to Focus in that respect. So that's why we kind of chose to review it today. But unlike Focus, Charade is an amazing movie. Spencer, you're the new guy. You're the Charade virgin. Tell us about it.
All right, well, Charade is a 1963 caper starring Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, and it's directed by Stanley Donen and written by Peter Stone and Mark Bem. It is about a woman named Audrey played by Audrey Hepburn, who wants to divorce her husband, only to find out that he's been murdered and somebody's responsible. But no, as it turns out, he actually was selling a. He was in deep with some other people in his World War II battalion, and there's some money hidden somewhere, and everyone wants this money, but she doesn't know where it is. And with the help of a man played by Cary Grant, who may want to help her out of the goodness of his heart or for ulterior motives, they must find out where this money is and stop her assailants. Connor, so do you want me to start for the how do I feel about Charade because I'm the newbie, or do you want to because you are the veteran?
Okay, I just want to say I love this movie, and watching it on the big screen was like a dream come true. I think this is the best Hitchcock movie that Hitchcock didn't make. I love this movie. I think it's great. It's so entertaining. It's so darn likable. You have Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant as your leads. It can't not be likable. Anyways, I want to hear what you have to say.
All right. Yes, I think A.O. Scott said it best. It's very Hitchcock. It's very much like a Hitchcock picture, but it lacks that extra psychological edge to it. But it doesn't really need it because that isn't what it's exactly going for. Yes, it has the intrigue and the sort of structure of a Hitchcock piece, especially with a woman as the lead character, and then sort of a mysterious man who may or may not be an ally or another foe. But sorry, but at the same time, it's also very kind of lighthearted and is a kind of a fun little piece that is pretty witty. As I was talking about with Focus, I feel the dialogue in Focus is kind of hammy and lackluster. Oh gosh, what did I say? I said that Focus, the dialogue is hammy rather than witty, and this is the opposite here because it actually risks being hammy at times, but because of the tighter script and the extremely likable, the charisma is oozing off of the screen. It just feels natural, and the banter that they have is fantastic. I actually really very much enjoyed this picture.
This movie, like here's something you don't really think about, but this movie uses its location perfectly. It's Paris, and you feel like you're in Paris with these two attractive, likable movie stars, and you're just on this larger than life adventure with them, and then you got these kooky characters played by three great character actors that are all trying to get the money from her, and there's one moment that I just want to point out that I know probably seems totally small, but the couple times I've seen this, it always just leaps out at me. It's when they're on a boat, and the sound design when they go inside of a tunnel, like the sound design isn't just normal talking. Like you start hearing the echo and the echo and the echo, and then the same take it goes back to normal when they get when they get under the bridge. And it's this because this movie is very very old, by today's standards. It's 1963. I mean, it's over 50 years old now, and it
still feels fresh.
The movie is it's aged remarkably well because 1960s movies have a bit of a stigma about them. They're kind of remembered as being very slow, not aging very well. They got this, it's the 60s.
There's an air about them.
Yeah, we kind of got to respect them for what they did to cinema, but by today's standards, we want more faster pace. But this movie, it's like you could put this movie in a theater now, and people will still watch it and still like it. It's so funny, it's fresh, it's exciting, it's entertaining. The opening credits are so much fun.
Okay, can I talk to you about the opening credits? I looked into it. They're by a fellow named Maurice Binder, and this after we walked out, I mentioned this reminds me of almost a Saul Bass opening credits. He did a lot of Hitchcock's opening, like Psycho and North by Northwest, Anatomy for a Murder. But this guy, Maurice Binder, I was right. He did 14 James Bond picture openings.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, this opening it feels very much Hitchcockian, but it also has that sort of Bond glamour to it. And
This
there you go on.
I wanted to like say something similar to that, where like it has the characters of a like a Hitchcock movie and a very similar kind of plot, but it's got that international flair of
Has
like a
the scope.
yeah, international flair and scope, but also sort of some plot elements of a James Bond movie. It's like a Hitchcockian Bond film, and if that doesn't make you excited, then check your pulse, man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You mentioned like yes, 60s movies have a reputation of feeling kind of slower, and even people like Doctor No is like the original James Bond movie is slower and more boring than this movie, and this came out the year before Doctor No. Did it, or was it the same year? Doctor No came out in 63 or 64,
Let me check really fast.
or it might have been 62.
Just talks and so
Okay,
on.
anyways. But anyways, this came out around the same time as Doctor No, and there are times where there's a scene, there's a fight on a rooftop, and Cary Grant and another character are exchanging blows, and there's actually weight to them. They feel like they're actually fighting, and I was actually getting into it. I was like, ooh, ouch, and like I was getting into it. I was getting onto the edge of my seat, and at the end, it gets genuinely intense. I was actually like, hurry up, do the thing, even though in the back of my head I knew that he was going to do, Cary Grant was going to, somehow save the day in some kind of way. But at the same time, I still had that sort of tension in my seat that I've hardly have ever felt while watching a movie like this from this era or any other.
I also think this movie has one of the best twists in it ever that people just don't talk about. In one line, oh, it's so good, and then it totally makes sense when you think about it and go think. It's great. It is Doctor No was released in 1962, so it was the year prior to this movie.
But over a year, I mean, you got quick. It's a fast movie.
Yeah, it's released the same year as From Russia with Love.
Oh, and there's that the train car tussle that. Yeah, you mentioned you had a kind of a really neat quote about this movie that you said before the show that actually adds a certain kind of uniqueness to it.
Wait, I think I wanted to say that. Was it about the screwball element?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, I wanted to say this.
I know. I'm telling you what, man.
So, this movie is like, people will always call this movie like a bit of a comedy because the comedy just works so well because these people are just so naturally likable and therefore funny. And it's about, this woman who's like, ooh, that man. I mean, he's Cary Grant. He's, you know what I mean? Of course the ladies love him. And so, it has a bit of a screwball comedy element to it, where there's a lot of kind of slapstick. Because, I mean, Cary Grant did all of his own stunts, especially in that rooftop tussle. I mean, he was a circus performer before he was an actor. And so it's equal parts screwball comedy and thriller. It's not a thriller with screwball comedy elements, nor is it a screwball comedy with thriller elements. It is both a screwball comedy and a thriller at the same time, and they coexist and blend so well. I think that element is what really gets under me. Like, not gets under me, but it really like makes me just really appreciate this because I was thinking, like, what do you call this movie? Is it a thriller? But it's kind of more of like a comedy, and then in that case, it's screwball. But then it's more thriller. It's right down the middle. You just called it a caper, and
Yeah. Yeah. What I think even makes it all the more, what heightens the screwball element is the fact that Cary Grant is so iconic for being in screwball comedies in the 30s and 40s. He was in Bringing Up Baby, The Awful Truth, and among others. Oh, he was in Arsenic and Old Lace, I believe.
Yes.
Which and so he's comedic. His comedy is impeccable, and him delivering these lines are just so. And the way it feels so natural, and he's kind of older in this movie, but he still has this youth and vibrance about him. And then Audrey Hepburn is extremely likable, and she's not constantly vulnerable. She's still like a lady. She's very much a lady in this movie, but she still is like no. Like she, it's hard to explain. They're perfect. It's like a Lego piece. Like Lego pieces just going together. It's I have trouble finding words right now to describe just how wonderful these two are together. If you think Will Smith and Margot Robbie are good to have great chemistry and focus, these two just blows that out of the water.
Talking about Audrey Hepburn in this movie, like she's very much a 1960s woman. Like, you know what I mean? She has a bit of that gender role. Like of course, she's like, it's Cary Grant, so she's like, oh, but at the same time, she's like, no, I can be my own thing. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. You know what I mean? And like when she like thinks she's in danger, she's intelligent and she's smart, but she also is just so darn likable, and she's not entirely knowledgeable about these things. Like her husband's dead, and like he has this whole double life that she had no idea about. So naturally, she's a little like, what do I do? Like, and she's confused and she doesn't really know this world very well. But she's capable and she's intelligent and she's funny and she's so beautiful in this movie.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
She's Audrey Hepburn, and I really liked her character. I'm so glad she was the main character, and all the twists and turns this movie takes, it doesn't get convoluted. And what I really like is that whenever the movie will take a turn, like this is a new revelation, it just goes with that.
Yeah, I like that too, and I think I love this. Go on.
It doesn't incorporate pre-twist and post-twist. It just goes, now this is the new status quo, and then this is the new status quo, and then this is the new status quo, and then they'll make a quick reference to something over here, but then, you know what I mean? It goes, this is the way it is for now, go with it. And then you go, okay. It doesn't ever go, well, wait, what about back then when you did this, and then you did this, and then blah, 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 blah. It doesn't do that. It just goes, here it is, enjoy it while it's like this. When it changes, and while it kind of reaches its point to its natural conclusion of that twist, it'll twist again, and then you're like, oh, what's it going to do next?
And I also love it. It just feels very. It is definitely a relic of its time, and when a twist happens, it happens at like the opportune moment in a certain plot that feels natural, but also part of it. Every time Audrey Hepburn feels like she can trust Cary Grant's character more, they finally reach this new level, and then there's a revelation in the plot, and it's like, oh, well, now what? But every time they get further apart, they get closer together, and they get further apart and closer together, and there's just, in that, I could buy the romance, because the two go so well together that we don't even have to know these too well as a couple. We can just tell by but like it's only over a couple of days, but through these interactions they have, just seeing them go farther and then closer and farther and closer, it really makes you be able to buy them together.
Yeah, I could talk about this movie all day.
Yeah, so could I.
It's exciting, it's action-packed, it's really romantic, actually. This is one of those things where this is one of my personal favorite movies, and like I can't really think of anything bad to say. I absolutely watch this movie. I think it's still on Netflix. Buy it on Blu-ray. It's one of the movies that I wish more people should talk about this movie. More people should see this movie. It's wonderful. I love it.
I do too. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. I really, really love this movie. It's a classic. Go see it if you haven't seen it already.
All right. Well, thank you very much for watching tonight. We are back on schedule. Next week, we are going to be talking about Chappie, the new Neil Blomkamp movie, which is probably going to be about class differences. Then we got the second best exotic Marigold Hotel, which we're probably not going to watch because we haven't seen the first one. If we somehow end up watching the first one, and then we probably will see the second one, but
Don't count on it.
don't count on it. And then there's Unfinished Business, the new comedy starring Vince Vaughn, Dave Franco, and Tom Wilkinson. Those are next week's releases, so you can count on 2 of those. So yes, that's everything I have to say. Anything else you want to add, Spencer?
That's everything for me, too.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Connor Nielsen.
And I'm Spencer Nielsen, signing off.